Alrighty, guys, I'm 3-0 my last 3 board member tier package bets on my website. And if you want to see a video breakdown of every one of my personal bets here today, the only way you can do that is to watch my board member podcast. And the only way to access my board member podcast is to join my full access, all-inclusive board member package on my website. But before we get into some more of that, just want to take a quick timeout and welcome you to my college basketball free pick video here today for Tuesday, February 28th, 2023. Happy Tuesday to you. Hopefully you got your week off to a really good start. Of course, my name is Brock Page. I've been giving out free sports picks right here on YouTube since 2016. I also sell my personal sports bets on patreon.com/BrockPage. And once again, guys, if you want to see a full video breakdown of every one of my personal bets here today, you can do that right now by becoming a board member on my website. Folks who are signed up to my all-inclusive board member package, they get access to my board member podcast every single day for the next 30 days if you sign up here today. You also get access to every single personal play, every single package, every single day for the next 30 days as well. The math works out to be just $1.66 a day, cheaper than your daily cup of coffee. Now, you may be wondering what the difference is between what I do here on YouTube and what I do on my website. Well, what I do here on YouTube is I'll handicap the entire slate of games in any given sport, side and total. What I do on patreon.com/BrockPage is actually share with you which one of these free picks on these videos that I'm actually betting on personally. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some free content. We're going to take a look at the Marquette Butler game. That'll be a 6:30 Eastern tip-off. Marquette's the 9-point favorite on the road. Total's 142. Now, Marquette should be able to get the job done on the road here. I typically stay away from, favorites in conference games on the road, especially laying big numbers like this, almost double digits. But I think the Golden Eagles should be able to get the job done here. They're 15-3 in conference play this year, and they're amongst the best offensive teams in the entire country. They're actually scoring over 80 points a game on the road, and they rank in the top 5 in the entire country in shooting from the field. Now, Cam Jones, he's averaging over 15 points a game, and he currently leads the team in scoring. Meanwhile, Tyler Kolek, he's drilling nearly 40% of his long balls, and he also averages a dozen points a game. Now, they're facing a Butler team who lost 12 of 18 against the Big East this year. They have all kinds of problems on offense. The Bulldogs are averaging only 65 points a game for the entire season. Now, injury-wise, Manny Bates and John Michael Malloy, they are both questionable for the Bulldogs. When it comes to the total, 6 out of Butler's last 10 meetings with Marquette did get over the number. So if you're into historical trends, plenty of overs to go around. Meanwhile, the Golden Eagles saw overs recently against the likes of DePaul, Georgetown, and UConn. Give me Marquette -9 over 142. Next matchup, it is going to be Boston College taking on Wake Forest, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Wake Forest is -8, totals 145. Now, the Deacs should be able to get the job done here. They're 13-2 at home this season, and they're averaging over 80 points a game there. Ty Appleby, he's scoring over 18.5 points a game, and he's shooting pretty well from three-land. Meanwhile, Damari Monsanto's second on the team in scoring. He's also drilling nearly 41% of his three-pointers. Now, they're facing a Boston College team who's certainly not built for a track meet. These guys average just 66 points a game, and they've won just 30% of their road games this year. And when it comes to defensive play, the Eagles are allowing their opponents to make a staggering 40% of their three-pointers against them when they travel. Now, total-wise, BC's gone 80% to the over in their travels this year. Meanwhile, Wake Forest is 20-9 to the over for the entire season. Give me Wake Forest -8 over 145. Next game, little ACC action. It's going to be Clemson taking on Virginia, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. The Virginia Cavaliers are -6, totals 129. And even though they are extremely tough to score on, the Virginia Cavaliers, they failed to cover in 6 out of their last 8 ball games. As a matter of fact, these guys have covered in only 37% of their contests for the entire season. When it comes to offensive production, the Cavs are scoring only 69 points a game at home this year. They're also amongst the worst offensive rebounding teams in the ACC. They're facing a Clemson squad who scores 75 points a game themselves, and they make over 80% of their free throws on the road. Matter of fact, the Tigers are in the top 5 in the nation in offensive free throw percentage while traveling. Hunter Tyson's drilling 42% of his three-pointers this year. He currently leads the team in scoring. Meanwhile, PJ Hall's knocking down 40% of his long balls. He also averages 15 points a game. And in their conference ball games this year, Clemson's currently 13-5 against the ACC. Now, total-wise, Clemson did see unders recently against the likes of Boston College, Georgia Tech, and Virginia Tech. They also held Virginia to just 65 points a game in their last 10 head-to-head meetings. Meanwhile, the Cavaliers, on the other side, they saw 5 out of their last 8 stay under the total themselves. Give me Clemson +6, keeping this one close, under 129. Next game, Florida, Georgia, 7 o'clock East. The Florida Gators are -2 away from Gainesville. Total's 144. Now, the Gators are still going to work without big Colin Castleton. And I'll tell you what, they could have certainly used him here lately because they've been pretty bad. They've been pretty awful recently. The Gators lost 6 out of their last 7. They covered only once during that stretch. Now, Florida also has a 300 win percentage while traveling, and they're quite possibly the worst defensive rebounding team on the road in the country. They're facing a Georgia squad who does a nice job grabbing offensive boards themselves, especially at home. And when it comes to defensive play, the Bulldogs are limiting their competition to just 39% shooting from the field on their home court. Now, Terry Roberts, he has over 40 steals on the year and a handful of blocks. He's also the team's leading scorer. Meanwhile, Kario Okendo, he's averaging just about 13 points a game himself. Total-wise, Georgia did see unders recently against the likes of Missouri, LSU, and Texas A&M. Meanwhile, Florida's gone 60% to the under in all of their road games. Give me Georgia +2, under 144. Next game, Georgia Tech, Syracuse, 7 o'clock East. Syracuse is -9 at home. Total's 145. Now, I'm not sure Syracuse is playing good enough defense to cover here. They're allowing nearly 72 points a game. They're one of the worst defensive rebounding teams in the ACC. Now, they're facing a Georgia Tech squad who, I get it, they haven't been great this year, but they did cover the point spread in their last 6 straight qualifying ball games. So if you've been tailing the Yellow Jackets, especially in a lot of these games catching points, you've been cashing in on tickets. Once again, they covered in their last 6 straight qualifying ball games. And in Georgia Tech's last 10 contests against Syracuse, the Yellow Jacks covered in 60% of those contests as well. The Yellow Jackets, Miles Kelly, he's scoring over 13 points per contest. He makes just about 90% of his free throws. So not only is Kelly getting the job done on the floor, he's making other teams pay when he's on the line. Now, Dallin Coleman and Lance Terry, they're both averaging just about double-digit points a game, respectively. When it comes to the injury list, Davion Smith, he is questionable for Georgia Tech. Now, total-wise, the Yellow Jackets, they've gone 80% to the under in their road games. Meanwhile, Syracuse saw 4 out of their last 7 stay under the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Georgia Tech +9, under 145. Next matchup, little Big Ten action. I'm talking about Iowa at Indiana, 7 o'clock Eastern start time. The Indiana Hoosiers are -5, totals 155. Now, the Hoosiers have been nearly perfect at Assembly Hall. They're 14-1 in their own arena this year, and they covered in just about 70% of those home games. When it comes to shooting the basketball, there's not many teams who are better than these guys. Indy's drilling nearly 42% of their three-pointers at home. They're also in the top 10 in the country in home offensive field goal percentage as well. Trace Jackson Davis, he makes 57% of his field goal attempts. He currently leads the team in scoring. TJD's averaging over 20 points a game along with 11 boards. He's actually one of the he's amongst the leaders in the country in rebounding as well. Meanwhile, Miller Kopp, he's making over 46% of his three-pointers. Trey Galloway, over 51% of his three balls. Now, they're facing an Iowa team on the other side who lost 7 of 10 on the road this year, and they covered in only 30% of those road contests. And in their last 10 head-to-head meeting with the Hoosiers, Iowa's allowed 78 points a game. This is a team that is struggling defensively with Indiana. Now, injury-wise, Xavier Johnson's still out for Indy. Anthony Leal is questionable. When it comes to the total, Indy did go 60% to the under in their last 10. Meanwhile, Iowa saw unders against the likes of Wisconsin, Northwestern, and Minnesota. Give me Indiana -5, under 155. Next game, little ACC action. Should be a good one. I'm talking about NC State at Duke, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. The Duke Blue Devils are -7, totals 145. And even though the Blue Devils are undefeated at Cameron Indoor, they are just 3-6 against the spread in their conference home games. So very tough to beat at home, undefeated at home. But when it comes to those conference home games, they're not getting the job done against the number. Once again, they failed to cover in 6 of 9 conference home games. As a matter of fact, out of 18 total contests this season against the ACC, Duke covered only 5 times. That's good for just 27% covering the number in their conference games. And in their last 10 head-to-head meetings with NC State, the Blue Devils allowed just about 80 points per contest. They're certainly struggling defensively against the Wolfpack. And speaking of scoring, NC State, they're a top 30 scoring team in the country. Terquavion Smith, he averages over 17.5 points a game, along with 4 assists. Meanwhile, Casey Morsell is scoring a dozen points a game, and he's drilling nearly 43% of his long balls. Now, injury-wise, Jack Clark is questionable for the Wolfpack. Dusan Mahorchik's still out. When it comes to the total, NC State went 60% to the over in their last 10. Meanwhile, Duke 60% to the over in Cameron Indoor this year. Give me NC State +7, over 145. Next game, Villanova, Seton Hall, 8:30 p.m. East. Villanova's -1.5, totals 130 and a hook. And even though they are the slight favorite, Nova's just 4-8 in their road games this year. When it comes to offensive production, the Wildcats averaged only 66 points a game in those road contests I just mentioned. Now, they're facing a Seton Hall team who's one of the toughest defensive teams in the Big East, especially at home. The Pirates are limiting their opponents to just 63 points a game in the Prudential Center. They're also holding their competition to just 39% shooting from the field in their own building. Tyrese Samuel has 24 blocks on the season and 30 steals. He's also averaging double-digit points a game. When it comes to offensive production, Alamir Dawes, he leads the team in scoring and drills nearly 40% of his three balls. Now, injury-wise, Kadari Richmond, he is questionable for the Pirates. Keep an eye on his status. He's been their legit deep ball threat. I think he's making over 44% of his three-pointers this year. Meanwhile, for Nova, Nana Njoku is still out for them. Now, when it comes to the scoring, Nova's 6-3 to the under in their conference road games. Meanwhile, Seton Hall's 9-5 to the under in their last 14 at the Prudential Center. Give me Seton Hall +1.5, under 130 and a hook. Next game, Arkansas, Tennessee, 9 o'clock East. The Tennessee Volunteers are -6, totals 134. Now, Tennessee should be able to take care of business here. They're the toughest team in the country to shoot on right now. They currently have the lowest defensive field goal percentage in the entire nation. They also limit their opponents to an NCAA low 24% shooting from three land. Zakai Ziegler, he's got nearly 60 steals on the season and a handful of blocks. Now, he's also averaging 11 points a game offensively. Meanwhile, Santiago Vescovi leads the team in points and also averages nearly 5 rebounds a game. Now, they're facing an Arkansas team who lost 7 of 9 on the road this season, and in those road games, these guys shot just 27% from beyond the arc. That's nearly dead last in the entire country. Now, injury-wise for Tennessee, Tyreek Key and Julian Phillips, They are a little bit banged up right now. Keep an eye on their status. When it comes to the total, they've all saw 5 out of their last 8 conference home games stay under the number. Meanwhile, Arkansas saw unders against the likes of Texas A&M, South Carolina, and Baylor. Give me Tennessee -6, under 134. Next game, Michigan State, Nebraska, 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Michigan State's -4, totals 140. Now, Sparty failed to cover in 6 out of their last 9. They're scoring only 64 points a game on the road. Now, they're facing a Nebraska team who's been pretty tough to score against in the Pinnacle Bank Arena. They allow only 64 points a game in front of their own crowd. They limit their competition to just 39% shooting from the field in that same category. Derek Walker has 16 blocks and 19 steals on the season. He also leads the team in points. Meanwhile, Casey Tominaga makes over 40% of his three-pointers and also averages nearly 13 points a game. Now, injury-wise, Blaze Keita is questionable for the Cornhuskers. When it comes to the scoring, Nebraska's gone 9-5 to the under in their own arena. Meanwhile, Michigan saw unders against the likes of Ohio State, Maryland, and Rutgers. Give me Nebraska +4, keeping that one close, under 140. Next game, San Diego State, Boise State, 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Boise's the 3-point favorite at home, totals 134. And even though the Broncos are real tough to score against at home, they're arguably the sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. Even though Boise is one of the toughest teams to score against at home in the country, they're actually facing arguably the best road team in the entire country in San Diego State. The Aztecs are 8-1 straight up in their road games this year. They're in the top 15 in the country in defensive boards away from home. When it comes to defensive play, Darian Trammell has 40 steals on the season and a couple of blocks. Now, Trammell's also averaging double-digit points a game offensively. Meanwhile, Matt Bradley's leading the team in points. And he does a nice job shooting from long range. Now, they're facing a Boise team who's really struggled with the Aztecs in recent meetings. The Broncos lost 7 out of their last 10 ball games against San Diego State. And when it comes to offensive production, the Broncos were held to just 58 points a game in those 10 head-to-head meetings I just mentioned. Now, as far as this year's concerned, Boise did fail to cover in 5 out of their last 8 conference home games. When it comes to the total, Boise went 7-3 to the under in their last 10 against San Diego State. So, once again, if you're into historical trends, plenty of things to think about there. The Aztecs of San Diego State, they are 70% to the under in their last 10 this season themselves. Give me San Diego State +3, under 134. Next matchup, little SEC action. South Carolina, Mississippi State, 9 o'clock East. The Mississippi State Bulldogs are -16, totals 125. And even though the Bulldogs are hitting on all cylinders, I really do hate this number here. The Bulldogs are covering in just 50% of their conference home games. When it comes to offensive production, these guys are amongst the lowest scoring teams in the SEC. They're averaging only 65 points per contest, and they make just 27% of their three-pointers at home. Now, they're facing a South Carolina team who has little issue scoring on the road. The Gamecocks are averaging 70 points a game away from home this year, and they're in the top 20 in road three-point shooting. Gregory Jackson's also leading the team in scoring with over 15 points a night. Michi Johnson, he's also scoring over a dozen points a game himself. Now, injury-wise, Chico Carter and Ford Cooper are questionable for South Carolina. Keep an eye on them, especially Chico Carter. He's a pretty good long-range shooter. Now, total-wise, South Carolina saw unders against the likes of Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. Meanwhile, Mississippi State 60% to the under in their home games. Give me South Carolina +16, keeping that one close, under 125. Next game, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, 9 o'clock East. Texas A&M's -5, totals 136. Now, I really do like A&M in this spot here. They covered in 7 out of their last 10. They're 13-3 in conference play. Will Taylor has over 50 steals on defense and a couple of blocks. He's also leading the team in scoring. Meanwhile, Tyrese Radford, he's scoring 13 points a game himself. They're facing an Ole Miss team who lost 7 of 8 conference home games this year. When it comes to offensive production, these guys are one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the nation. They make only 28% of their three-pointers. Now, injury-wise, Ruffin and Ewan are both still out for the Rebels. Meanwhile, for A&M on the other side, MIAOH still nursing that hand injury. When it comes to the total, the Aggies saw 7 out of their last 10 meetings with Ole Miss stay under the number. They actually held the Rebels to just 63 points a game in those meetings. They also saw unders more recently against the likes of Missouri, Arkansas, and LSU. Give me Texas A&M -5, under 136. Next game, Texas Tech, Kansas, 9 o'clock Eastern start time. The Kansas Jayhawks are -9 at home, totals 145.5. And even though I do hate this big number here, the Jayhawks should be able to cover. They're 14-1 in the Allen Fieldhouse, and they covered in 7 out of their last 9 at any location. When it comes to defensive play, Kansas allows just 67 points a game, and their opponents are barely making just 40% of their field goals against them. Jalen Wilson has 15 blocks and 26 steals defensively. He also leads the team offensively with nearly 20 points a game. Meanwhile, Grady Dick is second on the team in scoring and drills just about 42% of his long balls. I always thought a clever sign, if you're a Kansas fan, is you don't know Dick. That'd be good, right? I'm talking about Grady Dick. You don't know Grady Dick. You don't know Dick. But anyway, they're playing a Texas Tech team who doesn't play great defense on the road, and they don't know Dick. The Red Raiders are allowing 71 points a game while traveling. Now 16 conference ball games. Texas Tech got the W only 5 times. Now, injury-wise, Daniel Bacho is still questionable for the Red Raiders. Meanwhile, for Kansas, Cam Martin's questionable for them. And when it comes to the total, 7 out of Kansas's last 10 meetings with Texas Tech did get over the number. Once again, if you're into historical trends, plenty of overs to go around. They're also 60% to the over this year at home. Meanwhile, Texas Tech on the other side, they saw 6 out of their last 9 away from Lubbock get over the line. Give me Kansas -9 over 145.5. All right, next matchup, it is going to be Louisville hosting Virginia Tech, 9 o'clock East. Virginia Tech's -10.5, totals 145. And even though Vatek's been horrible on the road, Louisville's been playing like a college intramural team. They're just 4-25 on the season, and they have only 2 wins against the ACC. Now, when it comes to offensive production, this is one of the worst defensive teams in the country. They're allowing 76 points a game, and they have one of the highest defensive field goal percentages in the nation. Now, they're facing a Virginia Tech team who definitely likes to score points. These guys average 75 points a game. They're a top 40 field goal shooting team in the country. Grant Basile, he makes 51% of his field goal attempts, and he leads the team in points. Meanwhile, Hunter Couture, he's scoring double-digit points a game himself, and he drills 43% of his long balls. Now, injury-wise, Darius Maddox is still inactive for Virginia Tech. Meanwhile, for Louisville, Hersey Miller and Manny Okorafor, they are both questionable. Now, total-wise, 6 out of Louisville's last 9 meetings with Virginia Tech did get over the number. They also went 80% to the over in their last 10 this year. While Virginia Tech saw 9 out of their last 10 get over the total themselves. Give me Vatek -10.5 over 145. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup for the video. It is going to be Fresno State taking on New Mexico, 10:30 Eastern start time. New Mexico is -8.5, totals 141 and a hook. Now, this does feel like a pretty generous number for New Mexico backers. The Lobos are 14-4 in their own building this season. They're one of the better scoring teams in the country. Matter of fact, the Lobos are a top 20 scoring team in the nation. And they're also in the top 20 in shooting from the field. Jamal Mashburn Jr., he makes 45% of his field goals. And he leads the team with over 19.5 points a night. Meanwhile, Jalen House, he's scoring nearly 17 points per contest himself. They're taking on a Fresno team who lost 6 out of their last 8 conference road games. When it comes to offensive production, This is arguably one of the worst scoring teams in the country. The Bulldogs are averaging just 61 points a game, and they are nearly dead last in the nation in offensive rebounding. Now, injury-wise, Sebastian Forsling is questionable for New Mexico. When it comes to the total, New Mexico's 11-6 to the over in their last 17 home games. They're also 75% to the over against the Mountain West. Meanwhile, Fresno saw 6 out of their last 8 conference road games get over the total themselves. Give me New Mexico minus 8.5 over 141 and a hook. And with that, guys, now it's time for our quick pick recap. I like Arkansas State plus 3 under 138. Marquette minus 9 over 142. American University minus 5 over 131. One final reminder, guys, I'm 3-0 my last 3 board member tier package bets on my website. And if you want to see a video breakdown of every single one of my personal bets here today, the only way you can do that is to sign up for my all-inclusive board member package on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage. Give me Holy Cross plus 5 over 140. IUPUI plus 14 under 140. Wright State minus 21 over 147. PFW plus 5 over 153. NC State plus 7 over 145. Georgia Tech plus 9 under 145. Clemson plus 6 under 129. North Alabama plus 9 over 152. LIPSC minus 1.5 over 150 and a hook. Kennesaw State minus 6 over 154. Bellarmine plus 17 over 128. Georgia Bulldogs plus 2 under 144. St. Louis plus 7 under 140. St. Louis plus 7 under 141. LaSalle plus 14 under 136. Central Michigan plus 16 over 147.5. Bowling Green minus 3 over 158. Ohio Bobcats plus 8 over 144. Miami, Ohio plus 2 under 148. Ball State plus 10 over 141. Indiana Hoosiers minus 5 under 155. Wake Forest minus 8 over 145. New Hampshire minus 6 under 136. UMBC minus 2 under 146. Bryant minus 3 over 147. Vermont minus 18 over 139. Northern Illinois plus 5 over 154. Seton Hall plus 1.5 under 130 and a hook. Texas State minus 4 over 131. Virginia Tech minus 10.5 over 145. Kansas, the Jayhawks minus 9 over 145.5. San Diego State plus 3 under 134. Nebraska plus 4 under 140. Tennessee Vols minus 6 under 134. South Carolina plus 16 under 125. Texas A&M minus 5 under 136. New Mexico minus 8.5 over 141 and a hook. With my next and final free pick for the video, give me New Mexico minus 8.5 over 141 and a hook.